Chapter 26. He protects her publicly. The penthouse was no longer a sanctuary. It was a command center under siege. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of the private lab, watching the news ticker at the bottom of the screen. Alastair Knight in custody. SEC expands probe into Blackwood Industries. Was the Sterling algorithm stolen? Every word felt like a physical blow. But the most painful part wasn't the corporate scandal. It was the way the public was talking about me. On every social media platform, I was being painted as the gilded hostage, a woman who had sold her soul and her father's genius for a penthouse view and a diamond ring. I looked down at the ring on my finger. It felt heavy, not like a shackle, but like a shield. The press is gathered at the main entrance of Blackwood Plaza. Alexander's voice came from behind me. I didn't turn around. I could hear the rhythmic clicking of his keyboard, the sound of a man dismantling a global conspiracy from his desk. "They're calling for your resignation, Alexander, and they're calling for my arrest. They can call for the moon, it won't give them what they want." Alexander walked toward me. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, his sleeves rolled up, revealing the corded muscle of his forearms. He looked raw, focused, and utterly lethal. "My mother thinks she's won because she's turned the world against us. She thinks if she makes the name toxic, I'll crawl back to her for a rebranding." "Will you?" I asked, finally turning to face him. Alexander stepped into my space, his hands finding my waist. His grip was firm, grounding. "I would rather watch this building crumble into the Hudson than take a single breath under her authority again. But you, Maya, you shouldn't have to carry the weight of my family's sins." "I signed the contract, Alexander. I'm part of the sin now." "You signed a contract under duress to save a dying man. I'm the one who drafted it. I'm the one who enforced it. And today, I'm the one who's going to end it." He reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. His touch was so tender it made my eyes sting. "Marcus has organized a televised statement at the plaza. 10 o'clock. Live on every major network. You're going to talk to them, now." "No," Alexander said, his eyes turning to shards of gray ice. "We are. I'm not hiding you in this penthouse while they tear your name apart. We're going down there, and I'm going to show them exactly what happens when you try to touch what belongs to me." Alexander POV. I watched Maya dress for the execution. She chose a suit of deep, midnight blue silk, sharp, tailored, and unforgiving. She looked like a queen preparing for battle. I saw her hand tremble as she reached for her briefcase, and I felt a surge of rage so pure it nearly blinded me. My mother had done this. She had taken a woman of pure brilliance and turned her into a target. "Ready?" I asked, standing by the elevator. "No," she admitted, her voice small. "But I'm going anyway." The ride down the private elevator was the longest 60 seconds of my life. I could feel the vibration of the building, the hum of the city that was currently baying for our blood. I reached out and took Maya's hand, my fingers interlacing with hers. "Don't look at the cameras," I commanded. "Look at me, only me." The doors slid open to the executive lobby. The sound was the first thing that hit us, a wall of noise, shouting, and the rhythmic, aggressive clicking of 100 cameras. Security had formed a narrow lane through the sea of reporters, their arms linked to hold back the surge. The moment we stepped out, the flashes were a blinding, white-hot storm. "Alexander, did you coerce her?" "Maya, is your father being held as collateral? Is the merger a fraud?" I didn't slow down. I kept my eyes forward, my hand gripping Maya's so tightly I could feel her pulse. I led her through the gauntlet, my presence a physical barrier between her and the vultures. I felt a reporter's microphone brush my shoulder, and I turned, giving the man a look so lethal he actually stumbled back. We reached the podium in the center of the plaza. The Manhattan wind was biting, whipping Maya's hair across her face, but she stood tall. She didn't look like a victim. She looked like the only thing in this city that was real. I stepped to the microphones. The noise died down instantly, replaced by a heavy, expectant silence. The world was watching. My mother was watching. "My name is Alexander Blackwood," I began, my voice ringing through the plaza with a cold, absolute authority. "And I am here to discuss the locked-in contract that has been circulated by those who wish to see this company and this woman fail." I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. "The document you have seen is a draft from a period of intense corporate transition. It was never intended as a final agreement, and it was never fully executed in the manner the press suggests. However, as the CEO of Blackwood Industries, the responsibility for its existence lies solely with me." I reached out and placed my hand on Maya's shoulder, a public, possessive, and deeply protective gesture. "Maya Sterling is the senior advisor of this company because she is the most brilliant mind in her field. She has saved this project from technical collapse, and she has done so while facing personal tragedies that would have broken a lesser person. To suggest she is a prisoner is an insult to her intellect and her character." I leaned closer to the microphones, my eyes fixed on the main camera lens. I was looking straight at my mother. "If there is a scandal here, it is not the contract. It is the fact that certain individuals within the Blackwood sphere are so desperate for control that they would weaponize a family's private medical history to manipulate the markets. I have already initiated a full internal audit, and I am formally calling for the resignation of every board member involved in the leak, starting with Eleanor Blackwood." A collective gasp went up from the press corps. The steward had just declared war on the Queen. "And finally," I said, my voice dropping to a low, intimate register that I knew was being carried into every home in America, "Maya Sterling is not a transaction. She is my partner. She is the woman I intend to marry. And if any person, any firm, or any news outlet continues to suggest otherwise, they will find the full weight of the Blackwood legal machine and my personal resources directed at their destruction." I turned away from the podium before they could start shouting again. I wrapped my arm around Maya's waist, pulling her flush against me, and led her back toward the building. The flashes were still there, but they felt different now. We weren't the prey. We were the storm. Maya POV. The lobby doors closed, sealing out the noise, but the adrenaline was still roaring in my ears. Alexander didn't let go of me. He led me to the private elevator, and the moment the doors shut, he pulled me into his arms. He held me so tightly I could hear his heart thudding, a frantic, heavy rhythm that matched my own. "You did it," I whispered into his chest. "You told them." "I told them the truth." He pulled back, his eyes searching mine. "Are you okay? Did they touch you?" "I'm fine, Alexander. I'm more than fine." I reached up and touched his face, my fingers tracing the hard line of his jaw. "You risked everything just now. Your mother, the board, they're going to come for you with everything they have." "Let them," he growled. "I've spent my life playing their game. Today I started my own." The elevator reached the penthouse, but the public protection wasn't over. Marcus was waiting with a laptop, his face pale. "Sir, the Knight Group just released a statement. Alastair Knight is officially stepping down, but the secondary board has voted to maintain the investment. They said your public defense of the Sterling IP proved the stability of the asset. They didn't call her an asset, did they, Marcus? Alexander asked, his voice dangerous. No, sir. They called her the indispensable lead. Alexander nodded. Good, and the stock? It's rebounding, up 6 points since the statement. Alexander turned to me, a slow, dark smile spreading across his face. It was the smile of a man who had walked through the fire and come out with the prize. You see, Maya, the world doesn't want a villain, they want a hero. And they're surprisingly easy to manipulate when you give them one. Is that what you were doing, manipulating them? He stepped closer, his hands sliding down to my hips. The intensity in his gaze shifted from corporate to carnal. I was protecting what is mine. If the world thinks I'm a hero for it, that's their business. My business is making sure you never have to doubt your place at my side again. Alexander POV. I led her into the library. I wanted to be away from the screens, away from the phones, away from the hum of the empire. I wanted to be in the mess she had asked for. I poured 2 glasses of wine, my hands finally steady. The public protection had been a success, but the cost was a permanent bridge burning with my past. I was officially the black sheep of the Blackwood family, and I had never felt more powerful. To the indispensable lead, I toasted, handing her a glass. Maya took it, but she didn't drink. She set it on the table and walked toward me, her eyes fixed on mine. Alexander, what you said out there, about the wedding. I meant it, Maya. I know we've only been in this mess for a few weeks, but I've lived 10 years in the last month. I don't need a calendar to tell me what I want. I don't want a big wedding, she said, her voice dropping. I don't want the Guildhall or the Savoy. I want it to be real. It will be whatever you want. I pulled her into my arms, the silk of her suit cool against my skin. But first, we have to finish this. Vane is still liquidating. My mother is still a threat. We're protected publicly, but the private war is just entering the 3rd act. I'm not afraid of the war anymore, she said, her fingers tangling in the hair at the nape of my neck. As long as I'm in the room with you. I kissed her then, a deep, soul-searing kiss that tasted of victory and the promise of a future we were finally building together. The fire of Act II was no longer a threat. It was the light we were using to find our way home. But as the sun began to set over the city, casting a long, golden glow over the penthouse, the doorbell rang. Not the private elevator, not Marcus, the main entrance. I frowned, my protective instincts flaring again. I walked to the monitor. A man was standing there. He was older, wearing a worn tweed jacket, looking entirely out of place in the high-tech foyer of the Blackwood Tower. He looked tired, but his eyes were bright with a familiar, intellectual fire. I felt Maya gasp beside me. Dr. Eris Thorne, she whispered, Caleb's father. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Eris Thorne was the man who had mentored Maya's father. The man who had been the soul of the original Sterling research before the takeover. I opened the door. Maya POV. Dr. Thorne, I said, my voice trembling, what are you doing here? The old man stepped into the penthouse, his eyes sweeping over the luxury with a look of quiet disdain. He looked at me, then at Alexander, his gaze lingering on our joined hands. I saw the statement, Eris Thorne said, his voice a dry, scholarly rasp. I saw the public protection. It was a very impressive performance, Alexander, almost as impressive as the one your father gave 30 years ago. Alexander's jaw tightened. My father. He didn't tell you, did he? No, I suppose he wouldn't. Eris walked to the Vigil of Justice statue and ran a hand over the bronze scales. The Sterling IP didn't start with Maya's father. It started with a partnership between me, her father, and your father, Alexander. A partnership that ended when your father realized he could lock us in just as easily as you've locked in Maya. The room went silent. The public protection Alexander had just given me felt suddenly like a hollow echo of a much older, much darker history. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my heart hammering. "I'm talking about the truth behind the Blackwood Empire," Eris said, turning to face us. "The reason your mother is so desperate to destroy the Horizon Project isn't because of a scandal, Alexander. It's because the project contains the one piece of evidence that proves your father didn't just acquire the Sterling Company. He stole it. And I have the original journals to prove it." I looked at Alexander. He looked like he'd been struck. The man who had just defended me publicly was now facing a revelation that could destroy everything he thought he knew about his own name. "The journals?" Alexander whispered. "Where are they?" "They're in a vault," Eris said. "But the key isn't a string of numbers, it's a neural map, one that only Maya can decode." The fire wasn't out. It had just found its real fuel. And as Alexander took my hand, his grip crushing, I realized that the public protection was over. The private war for the truth had just begun. Alexander POV. I looked at Eris Thorne, then at Maya. My world was tilting. Everything I had built, the tower, the name, the empire, was sitting on a foundation of theft. My mother hadn't been protecting the legacy. She had been protecting a lie. "We go tonight," I said, my voice turning into a lethal, mechanical thing. "To the vault. Maya, can you do it?" "I can do it," she said, her eyes flashing with a new, dangerous purpose. "Then let's go." I looked at the city lights one last time. I had protected her publicly. I had shown the world that she was mine. Now I was going to show the world that I was willing to destroy my own history to give her the justice she deserved. The fire was burning, and this time I was going to be the one who fanned the flames. Next chapter, chapter 27, she walks away.